Hello, welcome to Old Nerd Reads his Marvel Comics in Order. This is episode 124. This time I read Marvel Presents Guardians of the Galaxy, number 10. This is Roger Stern's first issue as writer. I believe he was the editor before this. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But Steve Gerber left. I don't know if it was because he had too much going on with Howard the Duck's presidential campaign and blah, blah. I don't know. But he left. Roger Stern takes over as writer with this issue, and the title only lasts 3 more issues. So we're almost at the end of this series. And I don't know if Roger Stern drove it into the ditch. I don't know if title itself just wore out. I don't know. But there's only 3 more issues at this point. It's kind of odd. Again, like in... what was it, the latest issue of Fantastic Four, Roy Thomas had left the previous issue, and he left kind of a mess for incoming writer. Was it Marv Wolfman who took over? I can't remember. I'll put a card up here to that video though, and just like that issue of Fantastic Four, which came out this same month. A new writer came in to the old writers, kind of leaving it in a mess. This is kind of the same way. This is part 3. See, concluding the origin of Starhawk, Deathbird Rising. This was, it was written up for 9 issues, and then left for a new writer to come in and pick up the pieces. Now, according to the letters page in the previous issue, Steve Gerber and Roger Stern got together, and so Roger Stern understood how to continue the series without Steve Gerber. So of course there's editorial and writerly communication from one writing team to the next, but it's funny to me that both of these titles, the previous writer wrote the incoming writer into a corner and said, "There you go, get yourself out of it." I don't think that's quite the case in this issue as it was in the Fantastic Four that I just mentioned, but you can tell that this is not Steve Gerber. Roger Stern is one of my favorite writers, and he does a good job with this, I think. But you can tell there is a glaring difference between Steve Gerber and anyone else, really. I'm new to Steve Gerber. I never really read much of his material before doing this project, reading my Marvel Comics in Order. I've never read a title that was exclusively Steve Gerber written, or I can't even tell you anything I read prior to this that was written by Steve Gerber. Although I'm sure I have. But he's very distinct. Steve Gerber is very distinct. He's very out in left field, I guess you could say. Like some of the stories and the concepts and the situations in his stories are very off kilter, I guess you could say. But and Roger Stern's more straight laced, but I think he does a fine job picking up where Steve Gerber left off. But everybody else is the same. Al Milgram's still the artist. I can't remember. Bob Wycheck has always been the inker on this title. I think it's kind of had a revolving door of inkers. Janice Cohen is colorist. I don't remember that name either. Anyway, Archie Goodwin is now the editor-in-chief. But we pick up where we left off last issue. The Captain America, the Guardians of the Galaxy's spaceship, is named Captain America. It's stuck in this weird force field, and then these Reavers bust through and board the ship and attack. Now here, Al Milgrom, as I've mentioned before, was never a favorite penciler of mine. I like him more now that I'm older and I'm reading some of the stuff that he started off with, like this title. And I'm appreciating him more now than I did. But here, this is a good example of why I didn't like Al Milgram's artwork. This perspective is just way off. So you've got Martin X shooting at this at this reaver that boarded their ship. He's shooting. He's melding the pistol in his hand, but Martin X he's basically shooting straight up into the sky. Yet this reaver is right in front of him. Same level as him basically, but the perspective's all off because it looks like Martin X's hand is straight up in the air and he's shooting straight up into the air, where he's actually shooting straight in front of him. So the head and the arm are way off as far as perspective goes. But then he does stuff like this on the next page where suddenly they lose gravity inside the ship and everybody's suddenly floating and it's chaos. And his perspective and his weird angles all kind of makes sense for this panel because suddenly everybody's weightless, finding themselves in a zero gravity environment. It kind of works there. I took a lot of notes on this issue, so I got to keep one eye on my notepad over here. But yeah, a big fight breaks out between these invaders and the Guardians. Then you got this great Sal Buscema panel right here. This to me just looks like something Sal Buscema would draw. Usually the person getting punched is at the bottom of the panel. This guy would be at the upside down at the bottom of the panel. His face would be coming right at you, and the person punching would be up on top. But this reminds me of Ron Frenz. Does anybody else out there, any other old nerds, remember Ron Frenz? He had a great run on Amazing Spider-Man. He was the artist on Amazing Spider-Man when the black symbiote suit first appeared. He had a long run on Thor after that. He was a favorite of mine, and I feel like Al Milgrom and Ron Frenz have a bit of a similar style, and it was just odd that I didn't like Al Milgrom, but I did like Ron Frenz. This panel in particular reminds me of Ron Frenz. This looks like something you would have seen in his Thor run, but I digress. Let's see. So we find out that these invaders are over 1,000-year-old androids. They're robots. And they need the Guardians. Now they're stuck in this force field. They don't know what's up. They're trying to help Starhawk. And Starhawk has left them. He left the ship, went flying out. And now he's out in space, leaving the Guardians of the Galaxy in the lurch behind him. And we get the conclusion of his origin story from this point on. This is his adoptive father with his adoptive siblings, children here. We've learned that Starhawk is two people in one. He's a man and a woman who were brother and sister, adoptive brother and sister, and this was their father. And he's two people in one. So now we find that his adoptive father is hunting him down through space. And he's going to use these two children, these three children maybe. They're his adoptive siblings, Starhawk's human persona's adoptive siblings. He's going to use them to get him. Now we go back into the past and reveal some more of the origin of Starhawk. So on his homeworld, found this ruined temple underground, and it is the temple of the Hawk God. And this is the Hawk God. What a great design. We get another big panel of this coming up here in a page or two. This Hawk God design is really cool though. But this is one half of Starhawk, and this is Starhawk's other half. These two are adoptive siblings. They're not blood siblings, but they're adoptive siblings. Not that matters too much. But he is trying to figure out some of the lost technology that he's found in this abandoned temple. His sister followed him, and now she's kind of watching out for him while he does research, basically. And she notices that their father and his forces are looking for them. So she comes down and she says, "We got to go." Snatches this helmet technology, whatever he's been studying, out of his hand and tosses it. And it immediately activates the technology and it zaps her and she disappears. And her life energy, whatever, gets sucked right into the hawk god statue. And it wasn't really a statue, it was more like armor, I guess. And this is another big panel showing off this hawk god's design. This to me, I can see the Al Milgrom in this from maybe like his West Coast Avengers work. He had a long run on drawing West Coast Avengers, and this looks like something he would have done there maybe. But this for 1977, and it was probably drawn in 76 because this is the January 77 issue, really. Even though it's April, it was a 3-month lead time, I believe. So this actually was on the stands in January of 77. So this was drawn in 76. But it really, to me, this looks, the design of this hawk god looks like something you would have seen in the Image era of comics in the early 90s when Image was founded. This looks like the kind of armor, the kind of superhero costume design you would find, 10, 12, 13 years later than this was actually done. But that's just me. But she kind of freaks out because she whoops, I skipped something that I wanted to mention here. Looking back and forth from this to my notes isn't easy. But when the female spots their father and his forces coming to look for them, she says, "I know the old man. He'll ship us both off to the mines if we live that long." Was that like a trope in science fiction or adventure or fantasy? Because in 77 as well, Star Wars came out. And if anybody who's a Star Wars fan will remember C-3PO in the beginning of Star Wars, the first movie, when the Rebel cruiser is attacked by the Imperial Star Destroyer, C-3PO mentions that they'll be sent off to the spice mines of Kessel if they're captured. Like, was that a trope in sci-fi and adventure at that time? Like, if the despot catches you, you're going to be sent to the mines and be slave labor in mines? I don't know. It was just kind of something that occurred to me while I was reading this, I guess. Now, after her consciousness gets transported into the hawk god, she goes crazy and busts out of the top of the temple into the sky. And her father's forces see her, call him up on this big old cell phone that he's got, and he sends in his air force. And does this not look like Masters of the Universe ships? It's the first thing I thought of when I saw these ships, their design, how they're kind of like half spaceship, half winged creature. Like you got a bat, you got some kind of like hornet, some other kind of hornet. I don't know. It reminds me of Masters of the Universe anyway. And you get this excellent 2-page spread of the hawk god going nuts and destroying this army of this squadron of Masters of the Universe type ships. And you get this one down here. Does this not look like Yar's Revenge? Anybody else out there have an Atari 2600 back in the day and have the Yar's Revenge game cartridge? Doesn't that look like the ship Yar's Revenge? Anyway, what's he shooting at? He's again Al Milgrom's perspectives. Like, this ship's flying right at the reader and shooting right at the reader. You see, it's shooting these force beams or whatever, and basically the star god's behind him, or the hawk god's behind him. So he's flying right at the screen and shooting right at the screen. Like, what's going on with Al Milgrom's perspectives? Oh geez, I forgot that of course I was reading this last night at work, and I was trying to get my lunch down while at the same time I was reading it, which I realize is not a good idea. But right there you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but I was I was eating something and dropped it, and it splashed all the way across the table and landed right there like an oil. I forget what the heck I was eating, but I put these pieces of paper towel on each side of this spot where the oil got and left it in there overnight so it would soak it up a little bit. But you can still see a little bit right there. Way to ruin your comic book collection, old nerd, you dumbass. And that always happens to me. Anytime I eat something, it ends up not in my mouth. It ends up on my shirt. More than likely, my food will end up on my shirt. My wife is excellent at laundry and seems to enjoy doing laundry and seems to enjoy the challenge of stains. So I got really lucky in that department. But stuff like this happens too, where I get it on something I don't want it on. Anyway, we find out that this ship, this Yar's Revenge ship, is called a flitter. And the brother, trying to help his sister, he puts on the device and he's able to contact her through their minds, and she's lost. She can't control the power of the Hawk God, so he jumps in the ship and he's going to rendezvous with the Hawk God. He doesn't know how to fly it. He almost crashes, ends up hitting the Hawk God right in the chest. The Hawk God grabs him, and at this point he's able to get right in the Hawk God's face and basically remind her who she is. And then they meld into one, and this is where Starhawk is born. Big nuclear explosion happens. The two join together. As we see here, the father confronts them. First the male appears, then the female appears, and then there's an explosion of energy, and we have Starhawk. And the father, he of course wants Starhawk to stay because this is a weapon. He sees it as a weapon to help his rulership. And Starhawk says, "No, I am he who knows," or whatever, and he takes off into space. And automatically, his father is mad and says that he'll hunt him down with his dying breath. And that's where we pick up with this issue. Now we're in real time. The father's finally found Starhawk out in space, and he's going to kill Starhawk's friends, the Guardians of the Galaxy. Blasts the Captain America. He blasts the ship, and it disappears. And that's the cliffhanger. And next issue, a war with Arcturus. Arcturus is the name of the bad guy. That's issue 10 for Roger Stern's first issue. I think it's a good issue. Definitely different from Steve Gerber's writing, but I think it picks up where Steve Gerber left off, carries the concepts and story ahead faithfully, I believe, to what Steve Gerber basically would have wanted, and does it very well. I'm a very big supporter, big fan of Roger Stern as a comic book writer. I loved his run on Amazing Spider-Man. What else? He's done some. He did a run on Avengers that was quite good. I have a lot of his Superman comics, but I haven't read those yet. But I want to read those. But anyway, that's the end of issue 10 of Marvel Presents Guardians of the Galaxy. Now we get into the letters page. I wanted to point one other thing out about Roger Stern, and it was this page right here. I don't know why, but this panel makes me think Steve Ditko. Does anybody else see Steve Ditko in this style? Like, I wonder if Al Milgrom was a Steve Ditko fan, because Al Milgrom has such a strange, in the same way that Steve Ditko's style is strange, Al Milgrom has a strange art style. And when I saw this panel, I saw this head, I thought, man, that kind of looks like something Steve Ditko may have done. More detail, like Al Milgrom definitely puts in more detail than Steve Ditko did. But I don't know. That's just me, I guess. The letters page is kind of cool. I like how these letters pages are talking about a couple issues ago when we had kind of a reprint with Silver Surfer. I'll try and put a card right here to that video. But people are making suggestions. The readers are making suggestions about future stories with Guardians of the Galaxy. The problem is Guardians of the Galaxy is 1,000 years in the future of the Marvel Universe. And these readers are wanting the Guardians of the Galaxy to cross over with the heroes of the Marvel Universe, the Avengers, Spider-Man, Captain America. But the editors are saying, time travel stories are tricky, and if they're not handled just right, they cause a lot of problems. And it's funny to me that back then they were very concerned about logistics that way, whereas nowadays it doesn't matter. Just if there's 1,000 years difference in timelines between two characters, who cares? Just throw them together. Nothing matters. Multiverse excuses everything. Like all you got to do is say, oh, it's the multiverse, and that's how they can both be in the same story at the same time. But back then, the responses from editorial to these suggestions of readers about doing time travel stories, they were very reluctant to do time travel stories back then because of the problems they cause and because of and they even mention in here, we don't even know if the Guardians of the Galaxy is in the same dimension, the same time as the Marvel Universe proper. So I thought that was really cool that back then they were paying attention to that, and that makes sense because back then the comic books made more sense. It was more of a cohesive universe back then, and nowadays everything is just wide open. Do whatever you want. Change a character, put characters where they don't belong, replace characters with weird versions of the original. Back then, though, they didn't mess with that kind of thing, which is why these older comics, in my opinion, are better. At the very end of this, we get a thanks to Chris Claremont. I guess Chris Claremont helped Roger Stern with the plot of this issue, which is kind of funny because the issue before this, they say that Steve Gerber and Roger Stern worked hand in hand to get the transition from one writer to the other. But now we're thanking Chris Claremont for helping Roger Stern get the plot of this issue. So I'm not real sure what's going on. I wonder if there was some kind of falling out with Steve Gerber at this time with Marvel. I know that he did have one, and it must be coming up soon, but I'm not sure if this is when it happened. Like, it seems odd that he would just step away from Guardians of the Galaxy like that, hastily like that, right in the middle of a storyline, an origin storyline of one of the main characters, no less. So I wonder if there wasn't some sort of problem that we were glossing over in the issue before this, and in this issue we're saying that Chris Claremont had a hand in helping with the plot instead of Steve Gerber, which you would think Steve Gerber would be the one. And the other thing that was cool in here is they announced that there was going to be a brand new Star-Lord story in Marvel Preview by Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and Terry Austin. So is that the three of those first big team up before X-Men? It must be. I'm pretty sure I have the issue of Marvel Preview with Star-Lord in it, or at least I have like some sort of reprint of that story. I can't remember now how I own it. But anyway, lots of interesting little Marvel tidbits of trivia in the letters page of this one, and a cool story, a good follow-up. I like this cover. This is a really good cover. Al Milgrom wasn't my favorite, and when I saw that he was the artist of this series back when I first picked this series up a few years ago, I was a little disappointed, I will admit. But upon reading it now, and I'm more of an Al Milgrom fan. So anyway, that's Marvel Presents Guardians of the Galaxy, issue 10. Anybody else out there read this series? Please comment down below. If you know any other old nerds out there who like Guardians of the Galaxy, please share this video with them. Comment down below with your Guardians of the Galaxy trivia. Leave me a like. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.